Welcome back to episode 6. I am so excited that firstly I have made it to episode 6. I got told a statistic yesterday, I have no idea where this is from, but I'm going to go with it, that 97% of all podcasts do not make it past episode 5, which is mind-blowing to me, and I am now recording episode 6, so we're part of the 3% people. And yeah, 2025, it has been wild this year already. So much has happened in my personal life, and I'm going to open up about it and share. So many positive changes are coming, big changes as well, which I'm really excited to share. And I probably will do that in the next episode, is just a bit of a life after cancer update. And if you do go back and listen to my previous episodes, you'll get a bit of the gist of kind of where things have been going and where things are at, and get to know me a little bit more. But I'm really excited for today's episode. I'm very passionate about today's episode because I really do feel like this is the missing link for a lot of people, and it was the missing link for me in consistency and making better decisions in all areas of my life, really. So let's get into it. So today's episode, I am very passionate about this episode. It is one that I really enjoyed even just writing the notes, because it made me realize just how far I've come in this area, but also how important what I'm going to talk about today is just for all areas of your life, but especially your health and therefore your body image and everything that goes along with that. So basically this episode is about body image and the mindset that is attached to that to basically get the body of your dreams. And I am by no means about torturing yourself for your dream body or unrealistic body standards. However, I guess I have a bit of an unpopular view on things, but I do believe that everyone has permission and can pursue looking good. There is nothing wrong with that. I think where it becomes an issue is where we torture ourselves about our bodies and how we look and are we pretty enough and all the things that hold us back, I think, from real self-love. And I am all about health. Anyone who knows me, and again, you can go back and listen to episodes, but my health journey has been a big one. I battled a severe hormonal condition and then also overcame cancer. So health is like one of my top core values. It is everything that I am about. However, it isn't always what I was about. And even though I thought I was, there was so much in my story of a battle between trying to be at my optimum health and then battling with myself and dealing with quite a few demons that always kind of stopped me from getting to my optimum health. And ultimately, yes, led to dealing with conditions. So I'm very passionate about this being what I feel genuinely is the missing link, or was the missing link for me in why I could never quite get there. So it's a pretty I don't know, what's the word? It's a pretty explosive topic, especially when I now look back and I think how far I have truly come. To give you an idea of where I'm at, I am so consistent with my routines. I am so in love with my daily routines and my health. My health has never been better, and I've literally just gone through cancer treatment. My hormones have never been better. My fitness has never been better. That is an area I'm still building back up, especially after basically a year of not really moving my body. So there's plenty of things to come, but I feel I've got the strongest foundations I've ever had when it comes to my body. And I know this is annoying, it starts with the mind. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Basically what I have done in this area that has now led me to feeling at my optimum and having strong foundations. So, like with all of my podcasts, we're going to go back in time and start with my story all around body image and health, which is then going to come to what I would do now if I had to do this all over again. So I'm 34 now, and we're going to go back to 20-year-old Alex, basically. 20-year-old Alex was very, I have so much love for her, but she was struggling. She was really struggling. And yeah, I had so many demons that I was dealing with back in my 20s, and just a lot of self-worth issues, self-love issues, and so much from my childhood, but also I just did not treat my body very well, and would do a lot of things that I now deem to be self-harm. And I just don't do them anymore. They're just not a part of my life. I don't judge myself for what I did back then, because I did the best that I could. I really truly believe I did the best that I could with everything that I was dealing with and everything I was trying to overcome. So I have a lot of compassion and love for myself. However, if I knew what I knew today, it would have been so different. So back in my early 20s, I was very obsessed with body image. I don't even remember when it sort of happened. Growing up, I was always pretty lean. Yeah, I went through some chubby stages, and I really didn't know, like, I didn't have parents who taught me how to take care of myself. They didn't really know how to take care of themselves. But I didn't know how, I think it's fair to say, I feel, especially for my generation, 34, not many people grew up knowing the right ways to take care of yourself. And when I have heard stories of parents who did, I'm like unicorn. That was a unicorn experience for you, and I'm so glad you had that. But that wasn't the norm. Back in time, in the 2000s, growing up in those times, everything was very toxic around body image and health. It was all the years of skinny tea and just ridiculously skinny women were being glorified, and there was nothing around taking care of your mental health or your physical health. It was just all around being skinny. So I grew up thinking the skinnier I am, the better I will be. The skinnier I am, the more I will be loved and liked and deserving of things in life, which is crazy when I think about what kind of beliefs were being built as a child and then going into the world thinking that way. No wonder I became so obsessed with body image, the way I looked, and therefore the patterns and the cycles I lived out with taking care of myself were very in line with that. So I did all the things. I did the counting of macros. I did excessive HIIT, high intensity workouts. I basically just focused solely on fat loss and, yes, muscle building, like building a booty. And it was just all around, how do you build the biggest booty and stay the skinniest, basically. And it was just, there was nothing around actually, there was no talk of mobility. There was no talk of lymphatic drainage. There was no talk of why we need to do certain things to move our body in certain ways that help different systems, different cardio systems, heart health and things like that. Of course, these things were somewhat talked about, but it was never really, there was no emphasis on these things and how do we actually implement them in our lives. I don't think PE classes or anything in schools ever really taught me how to create a healthy habit and then stay consistent with it. And I feel that there was so much growing up that just the beliefs around this stuff, there wasn't information is what I'm trying to say. So I was very focused on aesthetics. I was focused on just whatever it was to stay as lean as possible and build the biggest booty. That was literally what I was doing. And for me, with counting macros, what happened, I did it for years. And what actually happened for me is I ended up with a binge eating disorder. And I'm smirking because it was actually the way it played out in my life. I didn't know. I didn't even know that what I had was a binge eating disorder until I started working with professionals and they were like, this is binge eating. And I was like, what do you mean? But I would restrict myself and basically eat next to nothing through the weeks. And then I'd get to the weekends and I'd go out with my friends and I'd be partying and drinking and doing all the things, eating junk food, eating shit, whatever it was. And I would do it all over again the next week, but I was yo-yoing back and forth, but my mindset was always in a place of restriction. So I created this, I guess, belief in me that I was never going to have enough. So I became, I believe that is what caused a binge eating disorder for me, because in moments where I couldn't have willpower, I would then just go crazy. Like, I remember nights waking up at like 1 a.m. at my parents' house when I lived with them. And I'm not joking you. I had nights where I sat on the floor at 1 a.m. eating a tin of biscuits, whatever was in the house, chips, whatever I could find at 1 a.m. And I would wake up mid-eating it. Like, it was done subconsciously, half asleep. And then I would wake up mid-eating and be like, what the hell? How did I even get down here? And I was gorging myself on biscuits and things because I was so restricted in other ways in my life. Just blows my mind when I think about that type of behavior. And even when I was writing notes for this episode, I was like, that is not what should be happening. So anyway, that is how I basically from extreme restriction, I developed binge eating. But then on top of that, I also developed body dysmorphia, which is basically where you don't see yourself how you actually are. You are constantly criticizing your body. You're constantly obsessing over your body. You are body checking in the mirror all the time. You are constantly thinking about fat loss and how you can be skinnier or how your body can be better. It is basically just an obsession with the way that your body looks, but also you don't actually see yourself how you actually are. I would look in the mirror, and it's wild. I look back at photos now where I was my leanest in my entire life. Yet at that time, I thought I was fat. I thought I was big. I thought I was chubby. And when I look back, I'm like, you were tiny. How did I even, I would look in the mirror and see, I would just not, I would look in the mirror and I was so critical and so judgmental of the way I looked, and I was not happy with the way that I looked. And it makes me think, how far do we go with this, where you're looking in the mirror and you are not happy with what you see? And how this played out in my life was just so many moments that were ruined by body dysmorphia or binge eating, worrying about food or worrying about the way I looked. So many moments. I remember, I have a memory that sticks out is a birthday that I had years ago, and I look back at photos and I'm like, you look beautiful. You look so beautiful. But at the time, I'm not joking you, the whole day was ruined for me because I just was constantly going into the bathroom between, hanging out with my friends to look at my body. And I would always ask my friends, I'm sure if my friends are listening to this, they would remember it. It'd be like, do I look okay? Is it what do you think? Is this and not a normal, what do you think of this outfit and leaving it there? It was I needed other people's validation to feel better about my body because I couldn't give myself that. But also, if I didn't like the way a photo looked or anything like that, it would just send me spiraling and my whole day would be ruined. It was a weird in-between of being obsessed with my body and hiding from myself. And it was just, it was when I think about it, there was so much energy wasted on my body and how I felt about my body and how critical I was of my body and the way I looked. So you can kind of get the gist of where I was at. And I think it's important to say, even though I was trying my best, I really was trying my best to have a healthy lifestyle, I just didn't. I had a lot of I escaped a lot through food, alcohol, recreational drugs, socializing, people pleasing. There were so many different ways that I was escaping myself and my emotions that led to unhealthy, unresourceful behavior. And when I look back, I can now see that so clearly. I just didn't know how to regulate my emotions and deal with myself. I also just didn't know myself. I was very lost, very insecure, and it led to a lot of this unhealthy behavior. And that is ultimately what I feel like was the missing piece for me with all of this. And even I had good habits, I was going to the gym every single day or, 4 or 5 days a week. I had healthy habits in my life, quote unquote healthy habits. However, they weren't done from a healthy place. So I was then making decisions, and this is up until, I would say the last couple of years, I was making decisions based on unhealthy intentions and always thinking about, my body and being leaner and fat loss and the way I looked and needing to look a certain way in order ultimately to be accepted and to be loved. That is what this has all been about when I think about it, is like, if I look a certain way, people will love me and accept me more, which is so fucked up that, and I'm not coming down on myself, it's just so fucked up that we torture ourselves because we want to be loved and accepted. And now I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here, but go with me on it. There is nothing wrong with wanting to look your best. There is nothing wrong with wanting to have a fit and healthy body and to have your quote unquote dream body. There is nothing wrong with that. But if you are torturing yourself and treating yourself like shit in order to have that, that is where I think the problem lies. And ironically, you're never going to get there if you're treating yourself that way. That is what I feel. When you treat your internal better, your external follows. And that is with all areas of your life. But I truly believe that when you start from the inside, everything on the outside reflects. Everything becomes easier, and your body then becomes a byproduct of the internal healing and changes that come about. So you get the gist of what it was like. And this really was up until, I would say, before the cancer. Even when I think about when I found the lump, which was July 2023, I was having a pretty bad body image weekend that weekend, and I still was dealing with some PMS symptoms. I previously had PMDD, which is one of the actual symptoms is body dysmorphia. So for me, the more that my PMS and my hormones were out of balance, the harder it got during the bit before my period to actually not be critical of myself. And even now, the bit before, like the 2 weeks, I would say, but mainly a week before my period, it does creep in a little bit more. And I think it is because your serotonin is lower, and you are therefore, it is harder to have love and compassion for yourself. However, where I am at now is nowhere near what previously would play out. And I will be really upfront in saying the cancer changed so much of this, and this is something I'm working through. I definitely hold a little bit of shame around having needed cancer to wake me up to a lot of these things. And it's something I shouldn't be ashamed of, because like, it is what it is, and I did the best that I could, and I was always striving for change and better. I was always trying to better myself. However, the cancer really was the thing that was like, oi, what the fuck are you doing? And this really is the catalyst for where the most change happened for me. So during the cancer, I put on 15 kilos and I was very inflamed. My body was going through so much. I was going through a year of treatment of chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and surgery. I barely moved my body during that time. Obviously, I couldn't. I was very vertical during that time. And I have done an episode all about this. So if you want to go listen to the cancer episode, I talk a lot about what that time was like. So I put on about 15 kilos or just over, and I was very uncomfortable in my own skin during that time. And I still remember this. This was really the moment where it all shifted. I was with my kinesiologist / therapist / just guardian angel. She and I were doing a session in the middle of the cancer, and I'd already put on quite a bit of weight by this point, and I just felt really down about my body and in my own skin. It wasn't even necessarily how I looked to other people. It was just like I felt so uncomfortable. That was the main thing. Like, everything felt uncomfortable. My thighs would rub together. Everything was just like, inflamed. And I remember Natalia, beautiful Natalia, my kinesiologist, she and I were having a session. It was all about how I was feeling about my body. And she made me realize where I was going wrong in that moment. I was so focused on trying to love the body that I was in, even though I didn't. And this is where I go back to the permission of it is okay for you to want to change your body and to want to have a better body and to grow and be healthier and be fitter. I couldn't at that time. And this is going to be one of my points later. There's a season. There is a season for you to be at your optimum, and then there's a season for you to not. Postpartum, I would say, is one of those times. I haven't had kids yet, but I have plenty of besties who do, and I am watching them go through it. It's not the time. They are the ones to say it. It's not the time where you are at your optimum or you're trying to get the best out of yourself. And it was the same for the cancer with me. It just wasn't the time to be berating myself or trying to get, certain movement in or hit daily habits or whatever it was. I was never going to be at my optimum. It was a time for rest, and it was a time for doing what I could. I still went for walks where I could. I still did certain things to help with my lymphatic drainage. I still did things to help. However, it just wasn't the time to be at my fittest. And Natalia turned around to me and she was like, how do you actually feel about your body? Because I was really struggling with why can't I love the skin I'm in and blah, blah, blah. And she was like, how do you actually feel about my body? I'm like, I don't like my body right now. I don't like it. I feel like a blob and I don't like it. And I started crying because the relief that came from being authentic with how I actually felt about my body was wild. I was truly what I needed. And this is where, if I was to do this all over again, which is I'm going to give sort of the real top tips that I would do if I had to do this all over again, and basically what I did, it was starting with body authenticity and then moving to appreciation to then move to love. I kept trying to love my body even though I didn't. I just didn't. And I know that is not what we're meant to say, but when you are coming, especially in the situation I was in, but you know what? You could be listening to this and be in a really hard stage of your life right now. You could be me at 20, dealing with demons, dealing with things that you're trying to overcome, going through a growth stage. Maybe you're at the start of your journey of personal development, or maybe you're midway through that journey and you're making some serious shifts. It's just about meeting ourselves where we're at. Maybe it is not the time where you're able to be at your optimum. So let's start with authenticity there. And then it was switching to appreciation. So what I would do, because how incredible is my body and your body for the fact that it carries us through every single day. But I had to come to a place of authenticity first, and then I could move to a place of appreciation. And that, I feel, is where the shift started to happen and where I started to rewire my brain. And to go back to the binge eating, this is where you really there is a level of rewiring that happens once you're aware of what's going on. Once I became aware of the binge eating, for example, it was then about me rewiring and going through. Basically, I allowed myself to have all of the food that I actually wanted. And there was a period of time where I probably was quite indulgent. And then from there, I started to bring in more nutritious food, more food that was about the nutrition content than it was about the excitement or what I call soul food or joy food. It's not the greatest for us, but it makes us feel happy, right? And once I started to rewire the restriction and start to allow myself to have what I wanted, yes, I did actually put on a little bit of weight for a time being there, but I accepted that, and it was like, this is what I'm going to do in order to get to the next phase, which is having more balance and having peace in the way that I eat. And there was a period of time where that was really uncomfortable, and it really did feel like, it almost felt impossible at times, because I was like, no, this isn't what we do. This isn't, We don't do this. We restrict. We look at the back of we look at the macros. We calculate how many calories is in this. And it really took a conscious effort. And it starts with awareness. It really does. When we're rewiring any belief in our brain or any behavior, it is about becoming aware of it and then slowly over time replacing it with whatever the new behavior is or the new thought or the new belief. And eventually over time, it will become solidified in you and it will become your new habit, your new behavior. For me with the binge eating, that really was allowing myself to have more of what I wanted, being more indulgent. And then what followed after that was balance. And now I am completely at peace with the way that I eat. I do not ever binge. Like there's not ever a moment that I have a binge eating moment unless I'm feeling unregulated. And I'll get into that. I'll get into that a little bit later. However, the restriction that I was dealing with just is no longer there. I know that I can have whatever I want, but I opt and choose for things most of the time that are more nutritious. And then I enjoy the indulgent stuff. I have a great mix, an 80-20 split of what feels really great for my body and then what just is indulgent and I enjoy eating. And from this place, it's also allowed me with my eating to fall in love with food. And I know people say that, but I have so much enjoyment when it comes to my day-to-day eating. I've become a better cook. I've become better at recipes and coming up with my own creations because I have fallen in love with food and moved away from calories and restriction and all of that. So that's to give you a bit more information on the binge eating side. And to go back to body appreciation and the first step was actually body authenticity and me admitting that I didn't like my body, I didn't like where I was at, was the first step to then moving towards body appreciation. And from body appreciation came body love. And that is really where everything has just come together beautifully. I don't believe for myself I could get to a place of body love, not at that time especially, but just in general, if I think about it, I'd always been trying to get to a place of body love and body positivity and all these things that people talk about now, but I just was never there. So going to a place of body authenticity helped me to become aware of what was actually going on and my thoughts daily and how I felt about myself looking in the mirror. From there, I shifted and started to rewire my brain towards body appreciation, especially because of the cancer. Like my body is incredible to have not only to have survived what it did going through cancer treatment, but even before that, even in my early 20s, to have gone through the things that I did that was self-inflicted, but also things that were out of my control as well. However, and even just what I was dealing with at the time, the demons that I was dealing with, everything that I was growing from and moving on from, my body is amazing to have been able to go through that. So coming to a place of, I would look in the mirror and I would be like, my body is incredible. It is I would say I'm a warrior. Look at this body. It is doing so much. And I don't want this to just be like, well, yeah, you had cancer, so that's easy for you to have that body appreciation. I think it comes, like, I really do think that is any stage. Even when I think back to my 20s, I wish I'd looked in the mirror and thought, wow, look at everything that this body is doing. It is going to therapy. It is trying to up level in all of your habits. Like, I just wish that I'd had more appreciation for the skin that I was in. And yes, cancer really helped, because when you think you're about to lose your life, you become very appreciative of the body that you're in. It didn't mean I loved my body though. It didn't mean I was my most comfortable. It didn't mean that I was like feeling at my optimum. And I think that's where I want to give permission here. And like Natalia gave me permission when I really needed it, to not be in love with my body at that time. However, have appreciation and have authenticity. From that place, that is where everything will shift. So if I was to go back and do this all over again and understand this all, if I was to go back and I had all of the knowledge and wisdom that I have right now, this is what I would do. So firstly, I would redefine what my dream body is. And I'm not going to go in too deep about unrealistic body standards because we've heard it a million times. But especially having grown up in the 2000s, and as I explained at the start of the episode, it is not realistic to look a certain way 24/7. It is not realistic to just even have a specific body if my shape is not that body. The amount of influencers I've looked at over the years and been like, oh, I want her body. We have completely different body shapes. I'm never going to have that body, and that is okay. And I think I've redefined what my dream body is. I really have. It's not my skinniest or leanest. I would redefine my dream body and be realistic about it. So that was what I had to do. I really had to look at myself and think, the body that I'm chasing or the body that I'm going after, is it even realistic for me? Is that something that, meeting myself where I'm at? What some of these women that we see on Instagram have to do to maintain their bodies, like seriously guys, it's on another level. You see athletes training and you're like, I want a body like that, but at what cost? And I'm not saying it's at a cost to them. They've probably been training like that for tens of years to be able to have the body they have. If I was to go and train like that now, my hormones would be fucked. And they were, because I was smashing myself constantly. My hormones would not be in a good place, and they weren't in a good place because I wasn't making good decisions based on where I'm at. I would meet myself where I'm at. So redefining my dream body for where I'm at and what is realistic, and that will change over time. Then you can start to challenge yourself a bit more. Then it can start to grow and change. And even for me right now, I've lost, I think it's over 10 kilos. I don't really check. And I'm very happy with that because it's been slow, it's been achievable, it's been sustainable, and I've done nothing other than moving my body and focusing on nutritious meals and focusing on what feels good for me and what doesn't push my body to the nth degree, but is still challenging me and is still allowing me to be devoted to my daily practices. But it's all sustainable, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really having a lot of fun with it. And that came from being realistic with myself and redefining my dream body. The second thing that I would do is focus on regulating my emotions. Massive one for every area of my life. So I recently have gone through couples coaching for Al and I, and I'll talk about that at another time. But we learnt this incredible technique for regulating your emotions. I thought I knew how to regulate my emotions, but after learning this, it is just on another level. It's called the 4-step method, and basically learning how to regulate my emotions and I'll get into the 4-step method, but what I want to do first is preface it by saying why regulating your emotions is so important. When I didn't regulate my emotions, that was when I made the worst decisions. That is when I would binge eat. That is when I would try to escape using alcohol and just basically making poor decisions because of my emotions and my state of mind. I don't think a lot of people realize most of the time they are unregulated, and that is why they're making the decisions they are. And that goes for myself as well. Now that I feel what it is truly like to consistently be regulated, I can now see all the times where I was unregulated and not really tapped into myself, and therefore making decisions that were not for my greatest good, and also not what I really wanted to be doing. Exactly the opposite behavior to what I was actively trying not to do. So the 4-step method is basically 4 steps to regulating your emotions. You start by naming the emotion, and then followed by the behavior that comes with that emotion. Then you replace it with a truth, and then you replace it with a action that is more resourceful and helpful. So I'll use body image as an example. So let's just say I woke up and I slept through my alarm, and I wanted to get up and do a walk. I wanted to get about the day, and I had a list of the healthy habits I wanted to do for the day, right? And I woke up late. Maybe I needed extra sleep. Maybe I went to bed a bit late last night, whatever it was. So I'm feeling disappointed, right? Now, how many times have we all been there where we're disappointed or we're stuck on feeling disappointed in ourselves, and then we go about that bleeds into the day. The rest of the day ends up being a write-off because we're like, well, you know what? basically diet starts Monday kind of behavior where you're like, well, the day's ruined anyway, or you're just spiraling about it. You're beating yourself up about the fact that you didn't get up on time. So I would say this is how I would regulate my emotions. I feel disappointed, and when I feel disappointed, I spiral. But the truth is, I have choices. I have the rest of the day to make better decisions, and I choose to let go and make better decisions. And you do that, usually for me, it's like 5 or 6 times where I really feel the shift and I let go of the disappointment. And you will feel it the more you say, and you do this with everything. You obviously just pick a different emotion, pick a different unresourceful behavior, pick a different truth. And the truth, you need to feel it being true. So you want to have evidence of that really can solidify in your life. And this is a very quick run through of the 4-step method. There's so many other ways that you can regulate your emotions, but this is just an example of one that I use, and it really does help for me. But it's basically allowing you to feel the emotion and letting it go, which then allows you to move on with your day and in a regulated way to make better decisions. And that has just been a game changer for me in all areas of my life, from my health, wealth, to my mindset, to everything, even like the way that I spend money or anything like that. When I am regulated, I make better decisions. So when I feel unregulated, I focus on regulating myself, and then from that place, I make better decisions. It is as simple. However, I appreciate it's not that easy sometimes. Sometimes it does take me going further and needing to journal about it or needing to meditate or whatever it is, but it's about really digging into it. And you will, like, this is where I say it's not easy all the time. I will sometimes then want to go and do unresourceful behavior. Like if I'll use a perfect example. Yesterday morning, I woke up and I was feeling quite unregulated. I'd had a pretty intense therapy session the day before, and heaps of stuff was coming up, and I hadn't yet fully processed it and felt it and really kind of understood it. So I woke up really unregulated, and I just did not want to do anything. I wanted to escape my emotions. I wanted to lie in bed and watch a movie and just escape. And I knew it was escapism behavior. It wasn't like, I'm tired today and I just need a rest day. It was coming from a place of, I'm trying to escape my emotions right now. Whatever is going on for me is uncomfortable, and I'm trying to escape that behavior. So I woke up and I was craving snacks. There's nothing wrong with snacks, but again, it's from the place that I was in. I was craving just junk food. I was craving escaping in bed watching movies, and I just really was like, I just don't want to deal with the day. And so I could have, two different roads I could have taken, right? I could have gone and spent the day feeling sorry for myself in bed, escaping, scrolling on Instagram, just trying to escape the emotions that were coming up, and binge eating snacks in bed. And again, I'm not demonizing snacks. I love snacks. I'm a snack kind of gal. It's not that I'm putting that behavior down. It's where it comes from. When it comes from a place of pleasure, or, you know what, this feels good for me today. This is what I want to do. That's different to, I am doing this because I don't want to sit with myself, basically. So I went and sat in my office back there, and I journaled and I cried and I meditated and I felt it all, and I wrote about it, and I had a chat with Al, and I just made sense of the whole situation. And it's just like, when you regulate your emotions and deal with it, and I'm not saying it's easy, I really get it. It took quite a bit to get me into that chair and journaling and regulating, and it doesn't always happen like that. Some days I just don't get there, right? But I'm so glad that I did push myself in a loving way to do that and to deal with it that way, because I ended up having the best day. I ended up going and getting my groceries, cooking myself delicious food. I did end up watching a movie in bed later on, but it was from a place of pleasure. I was really excited to watch it. I was in a playful mood all day. I was just happier. And it was all because I regulated my emotions. So that, you can kind of see, that's a bit of a personal story of how when we deal with our emotions versus when we let them take over and we try to escape them, we then exhibit unresourceful behavior or behavior we don't want. And that is not for me to decide. Whatever that behavior is for you to decide only. For me, how I would have spent the day if I didn't regulate my emotions, that's not how I wanted to spend my Sunday. I really wanted to be doing stuff that filled my cup up and lit me up. And consequently and beautifully now, it's Monday now, and I am now having such a great day. I've been so productive. I've been so on because yesterday was spent filling my cup up instead of escaping, which doesn't fill my cup up. And it ends up actually draining me and depleting me more because of the energy it takes to escape myself. And so the next point I'm going to make kind of bleeds into that is just becoming aware of your thoughts as well. And it comes into regulating your emotions and tapping into yourself. But when you become aware of your thoughts, you know, when you're looking in the mirror and you're body checking, or when you go to eat, what comes up for you? When you go to make yourself food, or when you go to do your groceries, or whatever it is, like how, just becoming aware, just start with that. What are you thinking and what is coming up for you when you're doing things around your body and your health? Because that was where I really gained insight. I really did not realize how much I would do things like checking the back of food. There's a difference. I do that all the time for ingredients, but I would look at it for the macros and I would look at it for the calories, and I would be calculating in my head, oh, that's going to cost me that today and that's going to cost me that. Like that for me is just not healthy, and it's not healthy for me, and it ends up in restriction, which is then even worse for me. So becoming aware of, or for example, and this is a recent one that I've really overcome, that I am so grateful I've overcome because it just was so much wasted energy. When I would go into the gym, I didn't realize it. It was really since the cancer of going back into the gym, of how I move my body. Because again, to go back to that moment with Natalia where it all changed, from that moment on I made a commitment to myself that I was no longer going to live the way that I was before with my health, but also the way that I saw myself and the way I treated myself internally. And part of that was, for example, the way I move my body. I didn't realize how much I had become about fat loss, or even just like muscle gain, but not in a healthy way. Muscle gain is incredibly healthy, but in a way where it's like I am thrashing my body or putting myself in a place where it's not good for me, because I was trying to achieve a certain body. And I would go into the gym and even though that day, maybe I needed to do some cardio and mobility, and I mean like steady state cardio, doesn't matter how many calories I burnt, doesn't matter how much, like just really move my body and do some active recovery and help my body to release inflammation and to come back to a great place of recovery. I was not choosing that. I was going into the gym and smashing my body again. And this is obviously before the cancer. I was smashing my body again because I was like, well, gotta burn calories today. And this is crazy, I wouldn't go to the gym at all, because if I couldn't do a like full-on heavy session or intense session, what was the point at all? If I wasn't going to burn optimum calories, what was the point? So I now have the mindset of something is better than nothing. And what I mean by that is I choose movement that really does go with what I need that day. I do have a standard of the sessions that I do each week. However, like I do prioritize building muscle, because that is incredibly important for everyone, but especially women. And I do prioritize cardio and mobility, because those are, heart health is important, and then mobility and lymphatic drainage and things like that are really important. There's so many different ways I move for different reasons. However, when I was in a place of nothing, if I can't burn the most, or if I can't do the most, then I'm not going to do anything. I was missing out on all of these other benefits and all of these other purposes of training and moving my body. Even now, and I'm literally staring at it right now, I have a trampoline now, a little trampoline that I'm just obsessed with it. And because with the cancer, I lost 4 lymph nodes, I had 4 lymph nodes cut out. My lymphatic system is really important, and it really is important overall, whether you've got 4 less or all of your lymph nodes. So I do little jumps on the trampoline because rebounding is really good for lymphatic drainage and activating your lymph system. But then it's also now become my favorite thing where I put on a song after I've done my lymph bounces, because there's a certain way you do it. Then I just jump up and down and just go crazy and enjoy bouncing for a couple of minutes, listening to whatever my favorite song is that day. And I have the best time. I have the best time moving my body that way. And that has come from rewiring my belief around, if I can't do the most, then why bother? Now, and it's just crazy when I think about it now. I'm like, that is so silly to think that way, because something is always better than nothing. Doing a walk is always going to be better for you. And I guess it's just been about leaning into what I need that day, what feels the best for me that day, and working from that place and not pushing myself to where it's harmful. And I will talk about this at another time because there's so much to cover in this specific topic, but I do cycle sync, and I do definitely take my cycle into consideration, or what I call is cycle honoring. And I pick my times where I push myself a little bit more, and I pick my times where I rest more. And rest is just so important in general. We all know that. But I think, But this has all come about because I've become aware of my thoughts, and then I focused on reprogramming and rewiring my mind, which leads me to my next point. When you are trying to rewire any thought, any belief, or any new behavior, putting post-it notes around the house is one of the best things you can do. So something that I always say to myself now, if I'm having a body image moment where I'm like, oh, and it does happen. I'm not perfect at this. I am still a human. It is more often than not, I don't criticize myself, and I do feel very at peace with my body and how I look. However, there are moments where it comes up because I'm human. And what I say to myself is, no one is you, and that is your power. And it's a Georgie Stevenson quote. I've fallen in love with it for as long as I have heard it. And it's all about tapping into the fact that no one has my face, no one has my body, no one has my mind, and that is the most powerful thing ever. No one has this, and no one ever will have this. And that is what my true power comes from. And I think it's about tapping into that appreciation for myself. So if I were to do this again, I would have a post-it on my mirror that says, no one is you, and that is your power. And it's just tapping you back in every single time to those new thoughts that you're rewiring. And with that point, it also allows you to stop focusing on your looks so much. I know that sounds counterproductive, but the fact that we do focus so much on how we look is part of the problem. We're so focused on how we look. We're so focused on how we look in certain moments instead of how we feel. I feel like when I've moved away from focusing so much on my looks, I feel like I've stopped obsessing, and moments have become so much easier where I do have maybe the critical thought or whatever it is that pops up. I just kind of like brush it off now, and it just doesn't really stick anymore because I don't focus so much on my looks. I'm just kind of like, well, no one is you, and that is your power, and go about my day. Like, okay, so what if I did look that way? So what if I did? So one of the final things that I would do, and look, there's so many things I would do, but I'm mindful to not overwhelm in the things that I would really start with if I did this all over again. This is a very important one, similar to the regulating of emotions, but I would focus on getting to know myself. And the reason I would do that is because when you fall in love with yourself, everything is easier. Everything is more enjoyable. If you are somebody, and I'll speak about myself here, when I was in a place where I didn't know myself, where I felt very lost, where I felt I couldn't even really name things about myself that I really loved, right? Qualities or passions or things like that. It was really hard for me to not be critical and not come at myself or judge myself. And from that place, you never make good decisions. You don't make decisions that are consistent. You don't make decisions that are actually good for you. So the more that I have gotten to know myself through exploration and discovery and understanding, what do I like? What don't I like? Who am I as a person? What do I like about myself? What don't I like about myself, and why don't I like that about myself? What am I growing from? What am I changing in my life? Who am I trying to become? When you start to get to that place of who am I and who am I trying to become and stepping into, and you explore that, you start to fall in love with yourself even deeper than you ever have. And from that place, everything just becomes easier. When I quote unquote didn't like myself, or didn't have a very deep connection with myself, or didn't have very high self-worth or self-love, everything was more difficult. The more that I have learned to fall in love with myself, and I really say this truthfully, I love myself. I really truly love myself and am in love with myself. From this place, my life is just so much more enjoyable. I am more compassionate to others. I love others more because I'm less judgmental of myself. Therefore, I'm less judgmental of others. When you go on that exploration of yourself and you fall in love with yourself, that is when things really do change. So the final thing that I would do if I went back and did this all over again, and this is something I've actually done recently, is I would set myself a small challenge and commit to it. So I'll use a personal story. I recently set a challenge for myself to meditate every day for 14 days. I'm now a month in and I have meditated every single day. And it's fine if I miss a day now. Like, I've now created this habit in myself though that I love. I absolutely am obsessed with meditating. It's become, and I think it's because I really have deep dived into what it brings to my life and the benefits. And I've also found a type of meditation that I really do love, which is at the moment, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I really love his work, but I'm also dabbling in other types of meditation. But anyway, I set myself out to do this challenge for 14 days. And the self-love and the self-respect and trust that has created in me is on another level. And that is why I'm bringing this up as a final point, because when you set a challenge for yourself and you commit to it and then you follow through on it, and you know what, if you miss a day or two, that's fine, keep going. Add an extra day. Have compassion for yourself. It's not about like coming down on yourself again and criticizing yourself. But when you see yourself following through on things, and from that place you end up loving yourself more because you do respect yourself more. It's just how it goes. And that also creates momentum, which then puts you in a place where you can add more things in, or you've got a solid foundation to keep going and add more things in. And I'll give you an example of what Al did recently. He actually did a 5-day fast, which had incredible results, but he did a 5-day fast and he was explaining to me what that reset for him in his self-trust and his self-worth. He created so much self-love because he said he was going to do something and he did it. And he was saying to me, this was like a few months ago, he had a couple of weeks where he just felt like he couldn't quite reach he just couldn't quite get to where he wanted to go with certain habits that he was reintroducing back into his life. And after doing this 5-day fast, he felt like everything just clicked into place and became easier. So it's like that created momentum for him. And this is where I encourage you to pick something that you genuinely want to do and feels good. It doesn't have to be a 5-day fast. That would be the final thing that I do if I did this all over again. Okay, so there was a lot that we've covered today, but I feel like I got my message across. I feel like I got the point across of what this episode really is about. And I really truly believe this is the missing link for a lot of people, including myself, of where consistency falls short or where we're not able to make better decisions for ourselves. And I really do believe it comes from a place of appreciation to the self-love. And that is where everything becomes easier. Everything becomes more in flow, and you will honestly be so surprised at how much easier your life feels and how easier it is to keep up with things in your life. And I think the point is, and this is the irony of it, when you focus on the mind first, when you focus on the internal, the external follows, always. It really does. So focusing back on the internal first, the external is always going to follow, and I think that is my main message of today. Anyway, I think that is more than enough. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you got a lot out of it, and if you have any questions, hit me up on Instagram, slide into my DMs. I'm always happy to have a chat. I'm always happy to pass on things that I've learnt, or just, I'm here to listen if you want to talk about this sort of stuff. And thank you for being here. The fact that you listen to this means more than you know, and I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you loved this episode, please share it with a loved one, and I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review and a comment. It really helps to support my podcast and get my message out there. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Alex Manstead. And one of my favorite things to do is have chats with people about life. Nothing is too big or too much, so please feel free to message me. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, dream big, love deeply, and live boldly.